When we're thinking about universal analytics, we want to think of it as the essentially now the previous generation of analytics. So just for some history, it was actually launched in 2012. So really not that long ago. And like the biggest features that came out with this new platform was the custom dimensions and custom metrics. So again, just a little crazy to think about, like that was just 10 years ago that we were introduced to something like custom dimensions, which is now so fluid in any type of reporting or analytical process that we all take internally as marketers. And then Google Analytics 4 is essentially like the newest release or the next generation of Google Analytics. And this version is more so leading with privacy standards, which I know Lauren has a lot of insights on, as well as the data collection and data visualization to give marketers a better understanding of their audiences on their site and the shopper journey throughout their website to a purchase.
Outside of these privacy restrictions, what are some of the key differences with this new iteration that marketers should be aware of?
Yeah, Sarah touched on this earlier, but really the key difference between these two iterations is the data models that they're built around. So Universal Analytics was built around a session-based data model, whereas GA4 is based around events. So with that, we can really expect greater data collection within GA4 with the idea that any interaction essentially can be captured by an event. So we think about things like form submissions or page views. Those are standard things that we would expect to be able to report on and analyze within analytics. But with this event-based structure, we can also capture more advanced interactions, things like page scrolls, site search, outbound clicks. So we're going to be able to get a lot more insights based off of this new data model. And marketers are also going to have the capability to create custom events that align best with their business as well. So we're not as restricted.
So events, though, can be familiar to much of the audience. Some people might be thinking, well, that was in Universal Analytics also. What did they need to know?
Yeah, so that's correct. Events were a part of the Universal Analytics platform as well, but events are going to look a little bit different when you see them in GA4. When you looked at event reporting in Universal Analytics, most of us were used to seeing them categorized by category, action, label. None of that exists within GA4. Now events are used to identify, different interactions within the website. And then they have corresponding parameters that are leveraged to give us deeper insights into the action that was taken. There are a handful of automatically collected events within GA4. So I mentioned earlier things like page views. Site search can be enabled to automatically collect. So the good news is that if you're sitting here thinking like, well, how do I collect all of these events and how do I set up all of these parameters? A lot of this is built in and will automatically start collecting data as long as you have GA4 set up and the code is implemented on your website. You're good to go. But the great thing is that I mentioned earlier is that there is the capability for custom events. So as you're getting familiar with GA4, as you're evaluating what those automatically collected events are and how they apply to your business, I recommend starting to think too what some of those additional events might be that could be of value to your business and start working. If you're in marketing yourself or working with your marketing team or your agency on what that implementation plan looks like in order to start collecting that data.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you a breath, but I have more questions. So the entire data model is changing to focus solely on events. Does that mean the metrics that we're used to seeing in analytics is also changing?
That's a good question. There will be some variances with metrics in GA4, but for the most part, I would say that the metrics that you're familiar with and used to seeing in your Universal Analytics are going to be carried over into GA4 as well.
Can each of you share one key enhancement or benefit of GA4 that you're most excited about for marketers?
Sure, I can jump in here. I'd say one thing I'm excited about that comes with a lot of features is more of this blended reporting. So one of the first things that struck me when I went into Google Analytics 4 is that it does feel a little bare. Like you're used to kind of this long sidebar on Universal Analytics with all these individual reports that you can dig into. And my first assumption was that this is no longer there. It's definitely not the case. Google Analytics 4 does a really good job at combining a lot of data and a lot of data points into a single report that can be incredibly helpful. So like two reports that I'm really looking at right now is the demographic details report. This is incredibly helpful for all types of businesses, but especially, working with a lot of local businesses, we can get a ton of information in a single report versus having to pull in different dimensions and then kind of trying to blend multiple reports on our own. So right within one view, you can get a lot of information about your visitor traffic from not only, of course, where they're coming from, but their age, their language, their gender, their interests based on their previous browsing or shopping behavior. And again, all right within one report, which we're not really used to seeing. And it's also displayed in a way that is a little more interactive. So you can kind of click on different features within the report to really dive into particular areas you're interested in. And this is kind of a commonality across all the different types of reports is like, they do, of course, give that table feature for those individuals that really just like to dissect the numbers, but there is that visualization piece that's also really, really great to see and kind of analyze trends. And kind of hand in hand is also like the tech details report. You can see the browser, device category, platform, operating system, again, everything just within that one single report. Something that's not necessarily new, but I just really love because it's been a little bit more enhanced is the conversions paths report that again goes hand in hand with this blended reporting feature. So this again gives a lot more insight into how a visitor actually converted on the site. So I think a lot of marketers use this report in Universal Analytics, but definitely encourage taking a look in Google Analytics 4 and just looking again at that data visualization piece because it will give you the early, mid, and late touch points of a user's journey into a conversion. And you can actually, again, deep dive into those individual points to understand how a particular dimension is being weighted against the conversion. So I feel like there's a lot, again, better features with visualization, but also that ability to kind of click through and like really easily deep dive into the data points.
Yeah. And Sarah, one of the things that I was just thinking about as you were talking through like the conversion path reporting is that within GA4, there's also the capability to toggle between different attribution models. Mm-hmm. So you can understand like if, in Universal Analytics, the standard was last click, which a lot of marketers are, prone to using, but there are so many different attribution models out there that can give you better insights into how all of your different marketing tactics are playing a role in, the success of your business. So being able to switch between and see how that impacts performance and how performance is being attributed to each of the marketing channels that you're investing in, I think is really valuable.
That's a great point, Lauren, because something that we were chatting about earlier was also like the integration with Google Ads and analytics, which of course is always like a best practice. But now with being able to see, beyond just last click, it's a little bit looking more at similar data and similar data patterns when looking at the two individual platforms like Google Ads versus analytics and kind of understanding what happens post-click. So that's a great point.